After the fall of the Titans, the three brothers drew lots to divide the cosmos. Zeus received the sky, Poseidon received the sea, Hades received the underworld. This is how the myth is usually told. Three brothers, three realms, three powers ruling separate domains. And at first glance, the division appears simple. Zeus becomes ruler of Olympus, god of lightning, order, and divine authority. Poseidon rules the oceans, god of storms, earthquakes, and the unpredictable force of the sea. Hades descends into the underworld, lord of the dead, keeper of hidden wealth, guardian of the unseen realm beneath the earth. Three gods, three territories, a cosmic hierarchy established after war. But as with so many myths, what appears simple on the surface often conceals something far deeper beneath. Because the ancient Greeks rarely encoded truth through literal description alone, their myths functioned symbolically, psychologically, architecturally. They described not only the external cosmos, but the inner structure of consciousness itself. And this raises an important question. What if the division of the cosmos was never primarily about geography? What if sky, sea, and underworld were never merely places, but principles? Not distant realms ruled by separate gods, but living dimensions within human experience itself. Because each of us contains a sky, a realm of thought, vision, perception, higher ordering intelligence. Each of us contains an underworld, a realm of memory, instinct, shadow, grief, buried emotion, hidden wealth. And between these two lies something fluid, dynamic, and alive. The sea, the realm of movement, emotion, feeling, energy in motion. The field through which what is above and what is below enter relationship. Perhaps this is why these three brothers have endured so powerfully within human consciousness. Not because they represent three ancient deities competing for power, but because they describe three fundamental dimensions of being. The realm above, the realm below, and the living field between them. And perhaps the deeper mystery is this. What if the three brothers were never truly separate at all? What if they were always part of one unified system? Because the storm begins in the sky, its lightning strikes the sea, its force eventually returns to earth. Above, between, below. Again and again, the same pattern appears. Not separation, relationship. And perhaps this changes everything. Because if the myth is describing consciousness itself, then the question is no longer simply who rules the sky, sea, and underworld. The deeper question becomes, what happens when these realms within us fall out of relationship, and what emerges when they return to coherence? Of the three brothers, Zeus is perhaps the easiest to recognize. He rules from above, from Olympus, from the realm of sky, lightning, and divine order. In myth, Zeus is often remembered through power, the king of the gods, the wielder of thunder, the one who strikes. And at the center of this imagery lies his most recognizable symbol, the bolt. Modern retellings often reduce the bolt to a weapon, a divine tool of punishment, a force of domination. But perhaps, as with so many mythological symbols, something deeper lies beneath the surface. Because lightning does not move randomly. It forms, it gathers, it builds potential. And then, in a single instant, it strikes. Fast, precise, directed. This matters because symbolically, the bolt appears less like a weapon and more like consciousness itself. Focused awareness, directed intention, the power to perceive, choose, and act, the power to bring order from chaos. And perhaps this is why Zeus aligns so powerfully with what we have called the I. The I is the principle within human consciousness that says, I see, I choose, I direct attention, I act. Unlike emotion, which moves fluidly, or the deeper self, which remains largely unseen, the I has vector. It points, it orients, it decides. And visually, something remarkable appears. The symbol of I is singular. One line, one axis, one. Like the bolt itself. A single line of force connecting above and below. Coincidence, perhaps. Or perhaps the symbolism is more precise than it first appears. Because the I is not merely identity, it is the organizing principle of conscious awareness. The part capable of discernment, of focus, of intentional direction. Without this principle, consciousness becomes diffuse, scattered, pulled in countless directions by impulse, emotion, and external pressure. The bolt cuts through that. It clarifies, it reveals, it illuminates. And perhaps this offers a deeper understanding of Zeus himself. Because Zeus at his highest is not tyranny, he is order guided by wisdom. The capacity to bring structure, coherence, and conscious direction to the whole system. But like all symbolic forces, the bolt has shadow. Because focused consciousness disconnected from deeper wisdom can become something else entirely. Control, domination, rigid certainty. The need to impose order rather than remain in relationship with reality. And this may be why Zeus is so often misunderstood. Because power itself is not the problem. The question is whether power remains connected to wisdom, whether the bolt still serves illumination, or whether it has become disconnected from the deeper intelligence it was meant to express. Perhaps the bolt was never about destruction. Perhaps it symbolized something far more fundamental. The moment consciousness becomes coherent enough to strike through illusion, the moment scattered awareness becomes singular. The moment the many becomes one. The moment we stop saying, I think, I hope, I fear, and begin to stand within the simple power of I. If Zeus is the most visible of the three brothers, Hades is the least understood. For many, the underworld immediately evokes images of punishment, darkness, death, hell. Something feared, something avoided. And yet this interpretation says far more about modern perception than it does about the myth itself. Because Hades was never the Greek equivalent of Satan, he was not the embodiment of evil. He was ruler of the unseen, the hidden realm beneath the surface, the kingdom below. And this distinction matters, because what lies beneath is not inherently dark in the moral sense. It is simply hidden from ordinary sight. Beneath the earth lie roots, minerals, gold, seeds, water. Entire ecosystems silently sustaining life above. The ancient Greeks understood this well, which is why Hades was known not only as Lord of the Dead, but also as Lord of Wealth. This surprises many people, and yet symbolically, it makes perfect sense. Because wealth often exists in hidden form before it becomes visible, gold is buried, gems are buried, potential is buried. Even seeds begin in darkness. Life repeatedly emerges from hidden depths. And perhaps this reveals something profound about Hades. The underworld may not represent punishment, it may represent foundation, the hidden structure from which visible life emerges. This begins to feel remarkably aligned with what we have called Am, because unlike the I which directs, chooses, and moves, Am simply is. It does not strive, it does not seek, it does not prove. It remains present, silent, foundational, and perhaps this is why Hades never leaves the underworld. Unlike Zeus, who strikes from above, or Poseidon, whose waters rise and fall, Hades remains below, always. At first, this may seem like a simple narrative detail, but symbolically, it may reveal something extraordinary. Because if Hades represents being itself, of course he never leaves. How could he? Being never leaves itself. The I moves, the Am remains. The I says, I seek, I choose, I go, I become. But Am says only I am, no movement required, no validation needed, no ascent, no descent, only presence. And here another clue appears within his symbol. The Bident, 2 prongs, 2. Unlike Zeus's singular bolt, Hades carries a symbol of polarity. This too may be deeply significant, because being becomes knowable through contrast, through polarity, through relationship between apparent opposites, life and death, known and unknown, light and shadow, presence and absence, self and other. The underworld is the realm where these polarities become impossible to avoid. It is where consciousness encounters what it would rather not see: grief, loss, shadow, fear, buried memory, unresolved truth. But Hades does not force these encounters as punishment. He simply governs the realm where what is hidden can no longer remain unseen. And perhaps this is why so much human suffering emerges from avoiding descent. Because what is buried does not disappear. It remains below awareness, quietly shaping behavior, emotion, and perception from beneath the surface. This may be why Hades feels so uncomfortable to modern consciousness, because modern culture is deeply Zeus-oriented. We value movement, action, progress, productivity, acceleration. But Hades asks something entirely different: stillness, presence, descent. The willingness to stop moving long enough to encounter what lies beneath. And perhaps this is the deeper power of I.Am. Before identity, before story, before performance, before becoming, there is being. The silent ground beneath the moving self, the hidden realm beneath conscious identity. The part of us that remains present, even when everything else changes. Perhaps Hades was never meant to be feared. Perhaps he was meant to remind us of something essential. That beneath all movement, something in us already is. If Zeus rules above and Hades rules below, what lies between them? The sea, the moving field between sky and underworld, fluid, dynamic, responsive, alive. And perhaps this is why Poseidon has always been the most emotionally recognizable of the three brothers. Because unlike sky or underworld, water does not remain still for long. It moves, it responds, it amplifies, it carries force across vast distances, it reflects, it distorts, it crashes, it calms, it remembers. This matters because symbolically, water has long been associated with emotion, instinct, feeling, and the unconscious currents moving beneath conscious thought. Emotion behaves like water. It flows, it gathers, it rises, it recedes. At times calm and reflective, at times overwhelming and destructive. And perhaps this is why Poseidon's realm sits precisely where it does, between above and below, between sky and underworld, between the singular I and the hidden Am. This raises an intriguing possibility. What if Poseidon is not merely ruler of a third separate realm? What if he represents something relational? A field created by the dynamic relationship between what is above and what is below. Because something fascinating happens when we look at the brothers symbolically. Zeus aligns with focused consciousness, the I, directed awareness, intention, order. Hades aligns with being, the Am, presence, depth, the hidden ground beneath identity. And when I and Am enter relationship, something emerges. A third principle, a living field, movement, energy, experience itself. Perhaps this is Poseidon, not separate from his brothers, but arising through their relationship. This may explain why the sea behaves as it does. When sky and depth are in coherent relationship, water becomes calm. Still water reflects clearly. Heaven becomes visible within the sea. But when above and below fall out of relationship, the sea responds, storms emerge, pressure builds, waves rise, tidal force overwhelms structure. The sea reveals what the system itself can no longer contain. And perhaps this is why Poseidon is so often misunderstood. He is not chaos, he reveals chaos. He does not create instability from nothing. He amplifies instability already present within the larger system. This becomes even more striking when we consider his symbol, the trident, 3 prongs, 3. Unlike Zeus's singular bolt or Hades' dual bident, Poseidon carries a symbol of dynamic relational structure. 3 is the number of stabilized relationship, a triangle, the first stable geometric form. 3 creates structural coherence, and perhaps the trident symbolizes precisely this: above, below, and the living field between them. Or said another way, I am becoming. Because when the singular I enters relationship with the polarity of am, experience moves, reality responds, manifestation occurs, the field becomes alive. This may reveal something profound about human experience. We are always manifesting, always participating in creation. The question is not whether reality is being generated. It is. The deeper question is, from what state is it being generated? From coherence or fragmentation? Because when the I attempts to force reality without connection to being, the waters become turbulent. Control replaces clarity. Attachment replaces trust. Effort becomes struggle. And manifestation still happens, but through chaos. Likewise, when being remains disconnected from conscious direction, potential stays buried. The treasure remains in the underworld, present but unexpressed. Yet when I and am enter coherent relationship, the field changes, the waters settle, the sea reflects, movement becomes aligned with being, and manifestation begins to emerge, not through force, but through coherence. Perhaps Poseidon was never simply god of the sea. Perhaps he represents something much closer. The living field through which consciousness becomes experience. The place where what is above and what is below meet, and reality begins to move. By now, a deeper pattern may be starting to emerge. Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades may not simply represent 3 gods ruling 3 separate territories. They may describe 3 interdependent dimensions of consciousness: the realm above, the realm below, and the living field between them. And perhaps the myth left us another clue hidden in plain sight, a clue so obvious it is easy to overlook. The 3 gods are brothers. Because this changes everything. They are not strangers, not separate beings ruling disconnected systems. They share origin. They emerge from the same source. They are family. At first, this may sound like a simple narrative detail, but symbolically, it carries profound implications. Because brothers remain in relationship with one another, even when they appear divided. What affects one affects the others. And perhaps this mirrors something deeply human. We often experience thought, emotion, and depth as separate parts of ourselves, as though the mind operates here, emotion operates there, and whatever lies beneath consciousness belongs somewhere else entirely. But this is an illusion. They are not separate systems. They are relational. They are family. And this means something important. When one realm falls out of balance, the others respond. When Zeus becomes distorted, the whole system feels it. This is what happens when the I becomes disconnected from wisdom. Consciousness loses relationship with being. The bolt no longer illuminates, it controls, it dominates, it forces. The need for order becomes rigidity. The need for clarity becomes certainty. The need for direction becomes control. Modern civilization knows this state well. Productivity without presence, action without embodiment, intelligence without wisdom, acceleration without stillness. The mind pushes forward, while deeper foundations remain ignored. And what happens then? Poseidon responds. The sea begins to storm. Emotion becomes turbulent. Anxiety rises. Restlessness increases. Pressure builds within the system. Not because emotion is the problem, because emotion is revealing the problem. The sea is responding to fragmentation between above and below. Likewise, when Hades becomes overloaded, the whole system responds. What is buried does not disappear. Shadow does not vanish through avoidance. Grief does not dissolve through distraction. Fear does not resolve through suppression. What remains unconscious continues exerting force from below awareness. Eventually, the pressure becomes too great, and once again, Poseidon responds. The waters rise, emotional eruption, overwhelm, collapse, tidal force breaking through the structures built to contain it. This may explain something profound about modern humanity. Never before have we been more capable of building outward systems, technology, networks, artificial intelligence, digital realities, structures of extraordinary complexity. And yet inwardly, many remain increasingly disconnected from silence, embodiment, emotion, nature, shadow, being itself. We have become extraordinarily Zeus-oriented. We value focus, control, speed, productivity, external achievement. But far fewer know how to descend, to become still, to encounter what lies beneath the moving self, to remain present with the hidden ground of being. And perhaps this is why the sea appears increasingly stormy, not only individually, but collectively. Anxiety, polarization, emotional reactivity, nervous system overload, collective instability. These may not simply be isolated problems, they may be symptoms, the sea revealing a deeper fragmentation within consciousness itself. And perhaps this is the deeper truth hidden within the myth. Poseidon is not the problem. The storm is not the problem. The tidal wave is not the problem. They are messengers. The sea reveals the state of the relationship between above and below. And perhaps this is the awareness many resist. When the waters within us become turbulent, the question may not be, what is wrong with the sea? The deeper question may be, what has fallen out of relationship within the system itself? If the storm reveals fragmentation, what restores coherence? Relationship, not domination, not suppression, not forcing the sea into stillness. Relationship. This may be the deeper movement hidden beneath the myth. The solution is not to conquer Poseidon, not to suppress emotion, not to override the storm through greater control. The sea does not calm because we command it to. It calms when the system itself returns to coherence. And perhaps this is where the deeper symbolic relationship between Zeus and Hades becomes transformative, because Zeus and Hades may not simply represent two external gods. They may represent two fundamental principles within consciousness itself, the I and the Am, the moving self, and the being beneath it, the one who directs, and the one who remains, the one who chooses, and the one who simply is. For many, these principles remain fractured. The I dominates. It strives, pushes, plans, controls, seeks to force reality into alignment with desire. Modern manifestation teachings often reinforce this. Visualize, focus, intend, think positively. Direct reality through will. This is overwhelmingly Zeus-oriented. The bolt is active, focused, powerful. But without relationship to being, something subtle happens. Will becomes force. Focus becomes tension. Intention becomes attachment. And the sea responds. Effort increases, pressure builds, the field becomes turbulent. Manifestation still happens. This is important. Creation never stops. We are always participating in reality. The question is not whether we are manifesting. We are. The deeper question is, from what state are we manifesting? From fragmentation or coherence? Because fragmented consciousness manifests fragmented reality, not as punishment, as reflection. The sea reveals the state of the system. And yet the opposite imbalance can also occur. Am without I, being without direction, presence without expression. The treasure remains buried. Potential remains hidden in the underworld. The wealth is real but unrealized, unexpressed, unlived. This too creates imbalance. Because being was never meant to remain isolated from conscious expression. And perhaps this is where the deeper power of the phrase, I am, begins to reveal itself. Not I alone, not am alone. I am, one and two, Bolt and Bident, singular awareness meeting, foundational being, directed consciousness entering relationship with presence itself. And when this relationship becomes coherent, something extraordinary emerges. The third principle, the field changes. Poseidon responds, the waters settle, the sea becomes calm, still water reflects clearly, heaven becomes visible within the sea, what is above becomes visible within what is between, and movement itself changes. Action no longer emerges from force, creation no longer emerges from lack, manifestation no longer emerges from control. It begins to emerge from coherence, from alignment between what directs and what is. This may be why the most powerful forms of creation often feel paradoxical. Effort is present, but struggle is absent. Action is taken, but force is absent. Movement happens, but something remains deeply still beneath it. The I moves, the Am remains. And because they are in relationship, the sea no longer needs to storm to get attention. It becomes responsive rather than reactive, fluid rather than chaotic, alive rather than overwhelming. And perhaps this is what so many are truly seeking when they pursue manifestation, success, or external change. Not merely outcomes, coherence, the feeling that what thinks, what feels, and what is are no longer at war. And perhaps this is what the phrase I am has always quietly pointed toward. Not affirmation, not identity performance, not mental programming, a state of alignment, a return to relationship. Because when I and am meet, reality moves differently, the sea responds differently, and sometimes on those rare days when above, below, and between are fully coherent, life feels almost effortless, clear, alive, responsive, fluid. Perhaps we call those moments many things: flow, presence, grace, alignment. Or perhaps we are experiencing something far rarer than we realize. A moment of wholeness. There are moments when the pattern becomes visible. Moments when the noise of modern life quiets just enough for something deeper to be felt. A walk in nature after mental exhaustion. A moment of stillness before sunrise. A breath that suddenly feels different. A day where life seems to flow. Not perfectly, not without challenge, but coherently. And perhaps most people have known such a moment at least once. A moment where thought felt clear, emotion felt fluid, action felt effortless, life moved, yet something remained deeply still beneath the movement. But what if such moments are not random? What if they reveal something profound about human consciousness itself? Perhaps what makes such moments unforgettable is not external circumstance, not the job, not the relationship, not the success. Perhaps what we are truly remembering is coherence, a moment when what is above, what is below, and what lies between return to relationship. And perhaps this is the deeper wisdom hidden within the myth. Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades were never merely distant gods ruling separate realms. They describe forces living within us. The sky still exists within consciousness, the underworld still lives beneath awareness, and the sea still moves between them. The myth continues, not in ancient Greece, here, now, within you. And perhaps This is the deeper invitation hidden within the phrase, I am. Not merely words, a living architecture. The singular I, the foundational am, and the field that emerges between them. When these fall out of relationship, the sea storms, when they return to coherence, the waters settle. And perhaps the real question was never whether the sea would move, it always will. The deeper question is this: what relationship exists between what is above and what is below within you? Because perhaps the storm was never the enemy, perhaps it was always the messenger. And perhaps the moment we stop fighting the sea is the moment we finally begin to understand what it came to reveal. If this path resonated with you, there are more journeys waiting within the labyrinth. More myths, more symbols, more forgotten realms waiting to be remembered. Continue the journey,